My mother always said military service was for people who couldn't get into law school. My father called it a temporary detour, something I'd regret once I grew up. My brother Mateo? He just smirked and said, "Come on, Ava. Girls don't belong in combat boots." None of them knew that while they were busy dismissing my choices, I was quietly becoming one of the youngest colonels in U.S. Air Force history. The Delgado family's annual holiday dinner was in full swing. The chandelier above my parents' high-ceilinged dining room cast a golden glow over polished cutlery and carefully rehearsed small talk. Crystal glasses clinked as they toasted Mateo's latest milestone, director of strategy at a major energy firm, headquartered in Houston. Director at 32, my dad boomed, raising his glass. That's a real Delgado legacy. Built from brains, not bullets. I nodded politely, swirling cranberry sauce across my plate. 10 years of decorated service, cross-continental deployments, and classified assignments. And still, I was the outlier. The failure, who didn't chase corner offices or company stock. "And how about you, Ava?" Aunt Lydia asked, tone sugary and sharp. "Still doing that military thing?" "I'm still serving, yes," I replied, meeting her gaze without flinching. My mother jumped in, too fast, too bright. "She's doing computer work now, something remote, I think. Nothing dangerous." By computer work, she meant leading the Air Force's elite cyber defense unit, 300 personnel, multiple Black Ops clearances, and responsibilities that kept foreign nations from breaching U.S. infrastructure. But I'd stopped trying to explain. They didn't have clearance. And wouldn't understand even if they did. Such a waste, Uncle Dennis sighed. "With your Ivy League education, Ava? You could have done something meaningful by now, like your brother." Mateo grinned and lifted his wine. "There's still time, sis. I could probably get you in at my company, entry level, of course." He winked, something more manageable for a woman. The table chuckled like he told the world's most original joke. I clenched my water glass, biting back the memory of the classified briefing I'd just delivered to the White House 2 days ago. Or the top-secret mission I was leading tomorrow. Or the medal quietly tucked away in my desk drawer. One the president himself had signed. "Ava just needs to realize," my father chimed in, "some people aren't wired for the business world. The military's a respectable fallback." Fallback? I almost laughed. They had no idea that Titan Tech Solutions, the defense division I commanded, was the same division Anderson Petroglobal had been desperately courting for the past 6 months. My father's prize corporation needed a federal cybersecurity contract to qualify for a new energy infrastructure expansion. And I was reviewing that contract tomorrow morning. "I heard they're letting women be officers now," my cousin Camila said, swirling her wine. "Maybe you could go for a promotion, Ava. Aim for, what comes next, sergeant?" I bit the inside of my cheek. Camila, bless her heart, couldn't tell a sergeant from a squadron. She thought a flight suit came with pom-poms. Let them believe what they wanted. Tomorrow would be enlightening. "Actually," my mother chimed in with false cheer, "Ava's friend James just started his own tech company. He's single, you know. Maybe it's time to think about settling down, dear. Find a nice man who can take care of you." James, I nearly laughed. They meant Major General James Harrison, my direct superior. Recently divorced, yes, but from his husband, not a wife. And he wasn't starting a tech company. He was spearheading the Department of Defense's joint initiative on civilian infrastructure protection. He'd be sitting across from Anderson Petroglobal's board tomorrow morning. "I'm focused on my career right now," I replied simply. My father scoffed. "What career? Pushing paper in some government cubicle? You had such promise, Ava. You could have been something." I stood up slowly, placing my linen napkin beside the untouched dessert plate. "I should go. Early meeting tomorrow." Mateo smirked. "Wouldn't want to be late for roll call." I didn't respond. As I stepped into the foyer, my father's voice followed like a shadow. "One day, you'll realize what you've thrown away. The Delgado name used to mean something in this city." If only he knew. Tomorrow, the Delgado name would mean something very different. Once inside my car, I pulled out my encrypted phone and dialed a familiar number. "Everything ready for tomorrow, Major?" I asked. "Yes, Colonel," came the reply, sharp and certain. "Operation greenlit for 900. Anderson's board won't know what hit them." "Excellent," I said. "Make sure all documentation is pre-cleared. No surprises. I want this handled cleanly, by the book." Of course, ma'am. Still think you should have told them. I watched the porch light dim as I pulled away from the house. Their silhouettes stood at the window, still unaware. We'll find out soon enough. Back at my apartment, not the military housing unit my family imagined, but a sleek penthouse perched above the San Antonio Riverwalk, I kicked off my heels and opened my laptop. The files were neatly laid out. Anderson's internal security framework was as porous as a screen door. They needed our contract, desperately, and they had no idea the fallback option, daughter, was the final signature they needed. A ping on my phone. Text from Mateo. Seriously, sis, think about that entry-level position. Could be good for you. I stared at the message for a long moment before powering off my phone. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be his fallback sister. Tomorrow, I'd be the one deciding if his company got to stay afloat. And they'd finally understand what I had built, not for their approval, but in spite of it. Better than wasting your life playing soldier. Mateo's text glared from my phone screen. I set it aside and opened my laptop, pulling up the final version of the classified threat analysis that would rock Anderson Petroglobal's board meeting in less than 12 hours. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't telling them they were wrong. It's letting them figure it out, slowly, publicly, and without a graceful exit. I crossed to the closet, brushing past jeans and blouses until I reached the garment bag at the back. I unzipped it gently. My dress blues shimmered softly in the closet light, metals gleaming against polished fabric. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be Ava, the stubborn daughter who never lived up to her potential. I would be Colonel Ava Delgado, commanding officer of the U.S. Air Force Cyber Defense Division, and the person holding Anderson Petroglobal's future in her hands. Dad always said the Delgado name meant something in this city. Tomorrow, he'd find out just how right he was. I picked up a photo from my desk. Me at 18, standing proud in my Air Force Academy uniform, while my family lingered stiffly in the background, their smiles more polite than proud. 10 years, 3 deployments, and 3 promotions later, I was about to redefine what a fallback looked like. The next morning, I arrived at Anderson Petroglobal's downtown headquarters an hour before the board meeting. My uniform was crisp, my ribbons and insignia placed with precision. The security guard at the reception desk blinked at my credentials. "Colonel Delgado," he said, straightening, "are you by any chance related to Mr. Luis Delgado?" "Yes," I replied evenly. "I'm the VP's daughter." His posture stiffened instantly. "Major General Harrison is waiting for you in the executive boardroom, ma'am." I nodded and took the private elevator to the top floor, the same elevator I used to ride as a child, visiting Dad on Take Your Daughter to Work days, staring up at the framed oil portraits of past executives. Back then, this building had felt like a monument. Now it was just another item on my mission list. James was waiting outside the boardroom, already in uniform. "Ready for this, Colonel?" he asked with a half smile. "When ready, sir." We reviewed the materials one last time. The packet in my hands contained over a dozen documented breaches Anderson's internal team had failed to detect. At 8:45, the board members began to filter in. Suits, polished shoes, familiar arrogance. My father entered last, deep in discussion with Mateo. Neither of them noticed me. Stationed near the display monitor, just behind the flag stand. "Let's get started," my father said, settling into the head chair. "As you know, we're here to discuss the DoD cybersecurity contract. Our internal team has—" "Actually," James interrupted, standing, "I'll be leading today's review." He turned toward me. "Colonel Delgado, if you would." I stepped into full view. My father's face went ghost white. Mateo's smirk collapsed. Around the table, murmurs of confusion swelled. "Good morning," I said, letting my voice command the room. "I'm Colonel Ava Delgado, Commanding Officer of Cyber Defense Command, U.S. Air Force. We're here to address critical vulnerabilities within your digital infrastructure, vulnerabilities your team has missed." The room went still, except for my father. He just stared, like he was meeting me for the very first time. If you felt that moment shift in the boardroom, when silence became power, make sure you subscribe. The next part of Ava's story is where the real impact begins. "Ava," my father sputtered, his voice thin and brittle. "What is this?" I tapped a button on the tablet. The screen behind me lit up with a government-sealed report, the title marked classified in bold red. 3 months ago, my team detected multiple breach attempts on Anderson Petro Global's internal networks, I said, my voice steady. Foreign actors targeting infrastructure, client databases, proprietary energy tech. Your systems have been compromised. The room shifted, chairs creaked, suits stiffened. A few board members exchanged worried glances. Matteo was no longer smiling. He was staring at the medals on my chest like he'd never seen them before. Your current security protocols are, I paused, watching the tension climb. Inadequate. I clicked to the next slide, vulnerability scans and maps of infiltration paths that had gone unnoticed by their internal IT department. Gasps broke out across the room. My father had gone pale. Colonel Delgado, one board member asked quietly, what are our options? My father finally found his voice, trying to steer the moment back. Now wait just a minute. Ava, you can't just walk in here and— That's Colonel Delgado, Mr. Vice President, James said sharply, cutting him off, and she absolutely can. In fact, she's the only one who can authorize this contract. I turned back to the room. These are the terms. Full protocol compliance. Immediate system overhaul under Dodd's supervision. Biannual audits conducted by my team. No exceptions. I handed out the documentation. The numbers made a few board members visibly flinch. But they knew, just as we did, they had no choice. If you choose not to comply, I continued, Anderson Petro Global will be designated a federal security risk. That means all government contracts terminated, effective immediately. My father's jaw clenched. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He understood the weight of what I'd just said. It would be the end of the company as they knew it. The choice, I finished, is yours. You have 24 hours to respond. As the board members began filing out, faces tight with unease, my father remained seated. Matteo hovered near the door, his earlier smugness erased, replaced by something else. Shock. Maybe regret. All this time, my father said, not looking at me. You were a colonel, I answered. Commander of the Air Force Cyber Defense Division. The person holding your company's future in her hands. His eyes lifted slowly to mine. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me, I asked, or would you have laughed like you did when I joined the academy, like when I chose command over corporate? Matteo took a step forward. Ava. I didn't know. Clearly, I said, cutting him off. Oh, and that entry-level position you offered? I glanced over. I make 3 times your salary. That's just base pay. I began gathering my papers, sliding them back into the secure briefcase. Suddenly, my father stood. There was no anger in his face now, only disbelief, the kind that comes when a man realizes he misread his own legacy. Ava, he said softly, what else have I been wrong about? I looked at him for a long moment, but I didn't answer. Some truths speak louder in silence. Sir, wait, my father called out, his voice softer now. Maybe we could talk, as family. I turned slowly, meeting his eyes. Calm. Family? I repeated. Last night you said I'd never be anything. That I was wasting my potential. I took a breath and let it settle between us like truth. Well, this is my potential, Dad. This is who I am, and right now, I looked him square in the eye. I'm not your daughter. I'm a colonel doing her job. At that moment, James appeared at the boardroom door. Ready to go, Colonel? The Joint Chiefs are waiting for our briefing. My father blinked. Joint Chiefs? Matteo whispered, stunned. Yes, I replied, stepping past them. Turns out pushing papers in a military office can lead somewhere after all. That evening, my phone lit up with messages. My mother suddenly beaming with pride for her military daughter. Aunt Lydia awkwardly apologizing for her remarks. Cousins asking if I could help their kids get into the Air Force. I ignored them all. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window of my penthouse. Yes, the one they thought I couldn't possibly afford on a soldier's salary. The lights of San Antonio glittered below me like a constellation of every decision I'd made on my own. A week later, Anderson Petro Global signed the contract, the largest in company history. Quietly, the board voted to remove my father as vice president, suggested he take an early retirement. Matteo's department? first in line for the cybersecurity audit. I didn't attend the contract signing, delivering a closed-door briefing to Congress on the evolving threat of state-sponsored cyber warfare. Later that night, I received an email from my father. His words fumbled somewhere between apology and understanding. I was wrong. You've become something I never imagined. I replied with 2 sentences. I didn't become something, Dad. It always was something, you just couldn't see it. 2 months later, I was promoted again. The youngest brigadier general in Air Force history. The pinning ceremony was held at the Pentagon. Senators, generals, foreign dignitaries. It was a room full of power. And somewhere in the back row sat my family, subdued and blinking under the weight of a reality they'd never imagined. My mother cried. My father looked as if someone had rewound his entire life and shown it to him through different eyes. Mateo saluted me. He got it wrong, of course, but he tried. That evening, during the reception, a young lieutenant approached me nervously. General Delgado, she said, eyes bright, your speech about choosing your own path despite what others think, it really hit home. My family doesn't support my service either. I smiled and gestured for her to walk with me. Let me tell you a story, I began. It starts with a family dinner where they told me I'd never be anything. She listened closely as I shared my journey. Around us, the reception buzzed, uniforms, foreign accents, journalists, decision-makers. My world. Outside the window, I saw my family still seated together. They looked out of place. Sometimes success isn't about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about proving yourself right. I touched the silver star on my shoulder, remembering the quiet nights I studied while Mateo partied, the missions I flew while my family posed for holiday photos, the medals earned while they shook their heads. My father always said the Delgado name meant something in this city. He was right, but now it meant something he never controlled. It meant service. It meant integrity. It meant excellence. And I was just getting started. If my story reminded you of your own battles, the ones you fought in silence, leave me a comment. Tell me where you're watching from and what you would say to the version of yourself who was told to play small. I want to hear your voice, because we rise stronger when we rise together. And if this journey stirred something in you, hit subscribe, not just to follow my path, but to remember yours, because sometimes the boldest move you can make is choosing to believe in yourself before anyone else does, and that changes everything.